Here on the Half Price Concessions podcast, and we are talking NASCAR, or I shouldn't say NASCAR spotting. I should just say spotting in general, because you're not just NASCAR guy, but
that's correct.
NASCAR seems to just be the most popular thing. But Tony White joining us.
Glad to be here.
I have been yelled at many a time in the tower. I think the first time you yelled at me, and it wasn't even at me, I was just in the room. It was a Coma Tour modified race at Ace. They were not counting caution laps, and you were spotting from the TV stand at Ace, which was right next to the tower.
Correct.
And I always left the window open so you and I could talk a little bit. Well, you pulled it open to yell at Randy Myers how everybody was going to run out of fuel, and they did.
Yeah, some things you can just see coming, and it's been a long time, but I do remember that. I'm like, we either need to stop the cars or do something different here, because everybody was going to run out of fuel, and turns out that did become an issue. So,
well, see, that's a thing I think people forget about you spotters. It's not just that you're looking out for your driver, but you're also, when it's like these, tours and stuff like that, you're up there in the tower wherever you are with an official, so you're having to communicate to the official probably in a better sense than like the team can down on the ground. The driver can't talk directly to them, so you're having to get your point across for your driver.
One way or another.
Yeah, so
And a lot of times the spotters official, which a lot of them are great guys, but some of them have their hands tied a little bit of what they can relay to the tower. And they'll kind of nod their head when one of us spotters tries to relay something, but that message doesn't always get delivered because they feel like they're going to get reprimanded or something like that. And I hear, all of us spotters have to monitor race control.
Yeah, so you're hearing what they're saying.
I hear if, they might nod their head, but if I don't actually hear that guy say, hey, so-and-so to tower, let's, get this going, it can be ugly at times.
The poor in-between official.
Yeah. Hey, somebody's got to be there. And that's the reason sometimes at Ace I just slide the window open, because I can...
You can talk right to race control. Like,
yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. But, you would get in trouble for that at most tracks. But, that Coma deal, it was a lot of fun, but, it wasn't always the most...
A little confusing at times.
Yeah, a little lack of organization, but it was a new series. I can't beat up on that series even though it's not around anymore. Racing modified tour type modifieds in the South is kind of few and far between. So anything you get is a good thing in my eyes.
Yeah. So the whole time that I've been announcing since 2010, I've always seen you around tracks and stuff, and you're a pretty well versed guy. You're not a one track pony or a one driver pony by any means. You kind of spot for a variety of guys, and anybody that follows you on Facebook sees some of the tracks you get to go to at the higher ranks and stuff. One of the main pictures I always think of you is of you spotting at Daytona, which just seems crazy when I see you at Ace, and then I see you like on the thing at Daytona. Did it kind of take you a while to be able to adapt to both, where you could do both on consecutive days, or did that kind of take some time?
When I first got an opportunity to go to Daytona, obviously it was very eye-opening. It was, it's a lot of pressure. It's one thing to spot for somebody that, is running around a short track at a top speed of, let's say, 100 miles an hour, versus at Daytona, mistakes that happen at 180, 190 miles an hour, they not only can affect your driver or a couple of people around, and you can wide up the whole field if somebody makes a blind, blatant mistake. And there's a lot of pressure there. Luckily, the team that I went with, the Race 101 guys with Tony Blanchard and a few of the different drivers that we had down there, I think Kevin Powell actually drove a car. Tom Buzzy drove one of the cars. I was helping out a kid named Carl Weber at the time. He was too young to actually race, but we went and tested Sarah Cornett Ching. I don't know if you know that name or not. Yep. She spent some time in the car down there. And, I had some pretty good guidance, some people around me that had been there. My experience knowing some of the cup spotters, being able to communicate with some of those guys and kind of get an idea of what's going on or the way things are done from our perspective. Some what to look out for, what to do and what not to do. And then you just kind of got to earn trust and build confidence. You know, just like the drivers have to earn the respect of the other drivers on the track that they're racing around. The spotters have to be able to have the confidence, and people have to trust your ability to relay messages back and forth, and and they know that if there's a guy with common sense on the spotter stand, at least they know that that driver is getting good information.
Yeah.
You know, and they're more apt to work with you no matter what's going on. If I tell somebody, hey, my guy will be fine, he'll just follow you, you know, whatever, we'll stay in line, we'll help you, whatever. If I say it, and now that I've been there, you know, several times, you know, my word,
more clout.
Yeah, a little bit more clout, but you know, it's definitely nerve-wracking, you know, especially something like the Truck Series. The ARCA cars tend to get spread out a little bit more. The Truck Series is 3 wide the whole time. It's nerve-wracking as hell. But we've got a pretty good strategy when we go to these tracks, because we're not racing for points. You know, Brian Doza is my ARCA and Truck Series driver that I help, and they're with the Raymock team that's been there a long time. The truck team is technically owned by a guy named Jim Rosenblum out of New York.
Yeah.
And that's the reason we have the fire department in, you know,
the
New York,
FDNY
on there, and in the NYPD. And that's one of the original truck teams that was there from 1995. And 2 years ago, I don't say we lucked into it. We ran a smart enough race and missed a lot of the action. We finished 8th, and that was that team's best finish ever since 1995, was 2 years ago. And so I'm pretty proud of that. And, you know, this past year we had a little mishap trying to get to pit road. There was a lap truck that kind of broke up our draft, and so we lost a lap, but in the process we actually led a lap, so that was cool for the team. But our goal was to finish on the lead lap in the lead draft, and we missed the lucky dog by 1 caution. We went across the line 17th or whatever, first truck a lap down with the lead pack. So we had a plenty fast enough truck. We just you know, the circumstances kind of bit us, but we brought the truck home in one piece yet again, and we're going back again this year. So I'm looking forward to heading back to Florida in a week or two.
I would say you are ultra busy. You are not. You do not get a lot of off time.
No,
when this stuff starts. Do you? Is that a? I guess that's a good thing. It'd be better to be wanted than not wanted as a spotter. Yeah,
a friend of mine, a very good tire guy, he helps the Cliftons out now, but he used to help the first driver that I ever spotted for, Brandon Heyer. He's a very good tire specialist. His name is Jeff Mitchell, and one of his famous sayings is, "It's way better to be wanted than available." So
there you go.
I kind of take that to heart. So
that's good. So you've been around racing for some time, working on cars and stuff. You're not just a spotter, but that's kind of just what I more know you as. How did this even get started for you? Was it kind of like luck of the draw, someone just pointed at you and said, "Hey, you take the radio and go stand up there"? Like,
yes,
how did that
yes
happen?
And no. I mean, you know, first of all, you know, we're at my house right now, and right down the street, growing up, Bill Wilder lived about 5 houses down the street from me, and he had that natural light Pontiac Ventura sportsman car that he raced at Bowman Gray. That was probably the first race car I was ever around. My dad sold auto parts for over 50 years, so I've always been around cars, but I guess the first team that I actually ever worked for was Junior Miller. There was a guy that moved here from Connecticut to get in the motorsports industry, the racing industry, and so he moved down here, worked at a Chevrolet dealership. He and I worked together. He said that, you know, you're always at Bowman Gray hanging out. You ought to just come work with us. And I'm like, you mean you work with Junior Miller? I'm not a Junior Miller fan. That's not my guy. That's, you know. But he finally kept on. He's like, come on, man, you'll love it. And sure enough, I did. You know, Jimmy Baker was the crew chief at the time. I didn't know him. I didn't really know any of the guys, but I was, you know, early 20s. Learned a ton from that guy about how to maintain a car, how to make sure nothing falls off of it. We didn't have the best equipment, but Junior Miller could drive a bucket of bolts. You know, he was kind of like the guy that drove that black 3 car. Yeah. Junior could wheel.
He could overcome the shortcomings of the car.
That's exactly right, and then some. Yeah. And, you know, he didn't really care if he made friends along the way or not, but he brought them with him to the racetrack, you know, and that was kind of his mentality. But, you know, that's the way you you win short track races. That's just the way, not necessarily blatantly dirty, but if you're going to be held up, he's not going to ride behind you. He's going to go. And
that was at a time when you guys got to run some really cool places. It's cool. I don't know if you posted or not. Someone posted the YouTube video of modifieds running in North Wilkesboro, and I think you were there, weren't you?
Yeah, we won that race.
That is so cool.
And there's a crazy story about that day. We had our 93 Troyer, which was our bread and butter. It's what we were running back then. This was in 1996. And we won that race and rode the elevator up and celebrated there in Victory Lane. Well, there had been a rain out a few weeks before that at Caraway. And Caraway, for some crazy reason, decided to run their race the same night as Wilkesboro. So we loaded up and hauled ass from North Wilkesboro to Caraway, where we had our brand new at the time 1996 Troyer sitting there in another truck and trailer. So the crew, jumped in our personal cars and hauled tail to Caraway, and we were leading that race with 7 laps to go, and I believe that Puddin' Swisher and Alfred Hill got together, and Junior couldn't avoid them and tore the car up. There's actually a piece off the nose off of that car hanging in my garage down here. But
did y'all get there in time to qualify and stuff, or just to race?
Yeah, I think we did, but it was very little practice or whatever. Maybe, Junior was so good at Caraway, I think he could unload a car right now and be competitive. Yeah. But that was it was a special day. We almost won, arguably one of the biggest modified races, North Wilkesboro or Martinsville or Myrtle Beach or whatever. I mean, North Wilkesboro was a really huge deal. And then to go to Caraway and run the Smart race at the time, we just about won that one. But we won several down there. I think we won like 4 in 1 year and a couple of championships in the 3 short years that I helped him. Once he started driving for the Riggs group, that was a great race team. But I started at RCR, and that's where I did, I wasn't on the road per se at RCR all the time, but I did get to go a lot. Whenever I wanted to go, I would sign up and go, and I learned a lot, and I think that's kind of where I got my ability to communicate with drivers, because I heard some of the best drivers, Burt Meyer's spotter, Danny Culler, is a good friend of mine because he and I worked together at RCR. He used to spot for Dale Sr.
Now, what were you doing at RCR? Like in the parts room?
I was in the parts department. When I first started there, I was stocking the parts rooms in the 3 shop, the 31 Lowe's car of Mike Skinner, and the truck of Jay Sauter. Yeah. So, and then they expanded to the Bush teams and this and that, and then 2001 happened. Harvick came along. I helped Harvick out a decent amount on the Bush team with the AC Delco car and whatever. I traveled with those guys some. But all that's, that was a long time ago. But to get back to where I kind of started spotting, Brandon Heyer and I worked together at RCR. Yep. I didn't know Brandon before I worked there. He told me that, hey, I'm driving this modified now for a guy named Brian Fischel. I knew who Brian Fischel was, and I knew his brother Aubrey and their father Lloyd and all the guys from Clemens Speed Shop and everything. Great group of people. So Brandon was running the North-South Shootout. I think it was down at Concord, and I believe it was 2005. It was maybe 6. Yeah, that's right. It's 2006, I believe. Anyway, he blew an engine going through the dogleg in a heat race. He didn't wreck the car. He just blew up. Well, they never threw a caution. Well, he drove through turn 3 and 4, and his dad, who was trying to crew chief and spot, which is, a handful.
That's tough. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, his dad and he were on the radio, I guess, talking about the engine situation or whatever. And meanwhile, Brandon's coasting through turn 3 or 4, whatever you want to call it in that triangle.
And he's just dumping fluid.
Yeah, dumping fluid. So here he comes down the front stretch, and he's like, well, I got to get this thing off the racetrack. Well, he turned down, and as he was turning down, Frank Fleming is leading that race, and they destroyed 2 modifieds.
Oh.
Yeah, so
Frank was pissed.
Frank was that was mildly, but Frank's a great guy, and so we took all the good stuff off the right side of our car and put it on the right side of Frank's car, and both teams were working on Frank's car so he could at least start the race. So we were, felt terrible about what happened, but we felt good that we were able to get Frank back out there to where he could at least start the race. Over the winter, I started working with that 44 team, and we started run the ASA Southern Modified Tour the following year. Yeah. Over the winter, built my relationship with Jim Heyer, Brandon's dad. Jim asked me, "Hey, would you like to spot? Are you interested in spotting?" And I'm like, that's something I've always wanted to do.
Really? You were pretty intrigued by that.
Yeah. So
was it just from like the communication you heard at RCR? Like
yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of it, but it's just something. If you're not driving the car, I feel like the spotter has the ability to make a huge difference on the racetrack. And I'm never one to get wound up on the radio unless. If I raise my voice on the radio, it's time to react and react immediately. But usually, no matter what's going on in the chaos of Bowman Gray Stadium, I just never get too wound up. There's a million YouTube videos with Johnny Tilley and all those guys that produce the videos, and of course the Madhouse show and this race night deal that they tried to do a year ago. But you can kind of hear in my voice, I never get extremely wound up, and you've got to stay calm. I mean, I hear some recordings of people that are screaming over the radio and this and that. That doesn't make the damn car go any faster.
Yeah, it just causes a headache for the driver.
I mean, I try to put myself in the driver's seat, and I kind of feel like I say what I would want to hear, because if I'm yelling and screaming and I'm trying to drive the car and I hear that crap in my ear, I'm going to take the radio and fling it out the window. I'd rather not have a spotter. As somebody that, hears a lot of that stuff or tries to communicate what they think. I mean, these drivers, they're wound up enough. They've got enough going on around them. Somebody's knocking their back bumper off. They're trading paint with whoever's beside of them. They don't need somebody screaming in their ear also. So.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed in some of those videos that got posted on Jonathan Brown's page, you'll hear your voice, and then I feel like I hear another voice. Is that someone in the pits? I guess
one of the
crew guys. Do you guys kind of have to? Have you ever had to kind of like coordinate how you're going to communicate? Because you're communicating in one way where you're talking more often, and then they're kind of in the pits. And maybe they pipe up if like he needs to come pit side or something like that. Do you have to coordinate, or do you kind of keep yourself separate so that you're not involved in that kind of discussion?
Well, I mean, the racetrack's mine. I mean, the radio is mine when the track's green. Now, under caution or whatever, we might talk strategy, we might talk tire wear, we might talk pit strategy, whatever. But when the car's on the track at speed, you're going to hear it from me if you walk over me, and I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
And that goes for at Daytona or Talladega or Charlotte or Bowman Gray or Ace or wherever. You know, when the car's on the racetrack, it's my responsibility, and I treat it as such.
Okay, that's good to know. I've always kind of wondered how that dynamic works. Do they have to like cue you on a separate channel if they want to talk to you?
Or do you kind of a lot of teams do that. I've not been one to use a separate channel. That might be something that I get into down the road. A lot of teams use a crew chief channel now to where you can talk back and forth, and you have two buttons in your hand basically to where I can talk back and forth to just the crew chief and the driver's not in the conversation, or I can hit the other button and talk obviously to both. So, that's a lot of teams do that. I've never done that, but I would be willing to entertain it.
So when you get to go to a place like Daytona where you're crazy high up. I know you got to have binoculars. You got all these different guys. I don't want to say there's more on the line, but maybe there's more money on the line. The equipment's pretty darn expensive, and everybody's paying to play. When you're in that setting, and like with the trucks, you're three wide the whole time. You're always in a pack. You're never strung out like the ARCA cars. How do you and the spotters communicate? Do y'all like touch each other? Do y'all just give each other looks? Like how do y'all communicate when you're talking to your driver?
During the race, it seems like a lot of times we're on our own unless we're about to pit.
Okay.
That's the most important time during the race. But in practice, we'll do drafting practice, and we're like, all right, we're going to go high down here in turn 1, and you guys are going to roll through, and, we'll just basically point, hey, we're going to go high or whatever. Or I'll even, how the drivers, when they're going down the backstretch and they're going to pit, they'll wave their hand. Yeah. I'll wave my hand so the other spotters know, hey, 28's coming. Yeah, 28's off the pace, off 2 here. So,
okay.
And I'll make sure that my driver waves his hand and he gets completely off of the track, because you can't just check up.
No, you're going to cause a wreck.
You're going to cause a wreck. And the last thing you want to do is try to pull up in front of a draft that's coming if you're by yourself, because you're going to cause a wreck or get run over.
Sounds like if you can't multitask, this is not a job for you.
No, absolutely
You got like
not.
10 different things going on at one time.
Mm-hmm. It's just like the driver. One mistake can ruin your day, along with a lot of other people's days if you're not on your game.
Yeah. One of the things I see at Bowman Gray, and I always see with you, is you spot from up in the stands.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of the normal thing for Bowman Gray? I feel like I see more people than you do it, but I've always kind of wondered if you're one of the rare ones that goes up there to do it where everybody else stays in a separate place.
There is that tower, Bowman Gray, a million years ago.
You should just have that single-story field.
Right.
house.
The front stretch was the back stretch way before my time. So there's that little old tower or whatever on the back stretch. And a lot of guys will go over there because it's a little bit higher perspective. And, you're not right there with the fans or whatever. Yeah. I personally don't like it because you have to look back and forth. In that quarter-mile track, when you're hauling ass, there's not a lot of room. You can be in a wreck in 3 and 4 if you're coming out of turn 2 and your head's turned the wrong way. Yeah. The reason that I stand where I stand is because I literally don't have to move my head and I can see the entire racetrack. I'm right on top of turn 1. I can obviously look straight down and tell if my driver's clear, not getting into that corner. I can look diagonally across the infield and see if my driver's clear, not getting into turn 3. Yeah. So, I feel like I can call the restarts pretty good from there too, because I've got a really good perspective of how the cars are lined up. And Bowman Gray I don't think they care if you've got a radio. So you definitely, as spotters, you don't have to be in one position. I think it was 2012, I spotted for Corey LaJoy in this K&N win at Bowman Gray. Yeah. And I sent, not a literal dummy, because I'm sure that guy wouldn't like me calling him a dummy, but I sent somebody with a crew shirt and a radio
to stand where the spotters were quote unquote supposed to stand.
Right. And then I would stay in my spot.
Okay.
And then, and obviously I could hear everything going on through race control. So, unless I needed to talk to the official, I could radio to that guy and say, hey, tell the official we need to do this or whatever.
I gotcha. So I've always kind of wondered about that. Mm-hmm. So now hear what you do these days, you spot for a lot of different guys. Does it take you a while to kind of learn the psyche of these different guys you work with as far as drivers go? Like which ones respond to certain ways of communicating and which ones like maybe you have to talk to a little different? Do you kind of have to be a little bit of a psychologist? Or do you just kind of treat them all the same and you either like it or you don't?
I basically treat everybody the same because it's kind of the same, I feel like, across the board. And I feel like that I've done it so much and so many people respect me at this point in my, spotting career, if you want to call it that, that people most drivers kind of adapt to me. Most of them like the way that I talk to them. So, I've worked with countless drivers now. So it's very enjoyable to be able to go and use the same terminology with all different drivers. Now, granted, some drivers tend to need more help than others. Yeah. But for the most part, most of the people that I help are professionals, and they just do it and don't complain about it. Some people want you to talk to them more, and some people want you to talk to them less. But other than that, that's about it.
I've kind of wondered about that because I remember I went to Martinsville a couple of years ago and I scanned Brad Keselowski's spotter, and he was talking a fair amount, but not too excessive. But then when there was like 50 laps to go, he was like, all right, I think he said something under the caution before the restart, like, all right, I'm only going to talk to you when necessary. I'm going to leave you alone a little bit.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, that seems like something that just comes from knowing somebody, at a certain point, like, I don't need to talk to them too much.
Yeah,
Because it seems like some guys, like, they react quick when they hear you key the radio.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it like I said, that is the biggest variance between drivers is finding out what they want, and usually that's somebody that's driven for a long time and probably has more experience than I do. You know, Jeff Foltz is one that comes to mind. You know, the first time I ever spotted for him, he was like, you know, just let me know if I'm clear. That's all I want to know. You know, he didn't mean it ugly or whatever. He's like, just, I don't need to know what going on, whatever. But then there were several years between the time that I spotted for him at Bristol in a modified and the time that I spent, you know, spotted for him just this past fall at Myrtle Beach in the 400, which we should have freaking won.
Yeah.
Still mad about that. But anyway, I felt like I called a pretty good race. He obviously drove a pretty good race. We just got screwed by circumstances in a curfew there at the end of the race and got ran over. We got the driver that ended up winning the race jumped the restart, and next caution ended the race basically. So he jumped the restart, we got put behind, and then they wadded us all up in turn one. Yeah. So we went from leading the entire second half of the race to getting wadded up on the last restart.
Gotcha. So you talked about how Bowman Gray, you can kind of get in a certain spot and you can kind of see the whole track. You don't have to turn your head so much. So I assume that's something you like. Where are some places where you have a challenge? Like, are there certain facilities that you go or you've gone to where it kind of gives you a headache or an ulcer a little bit? As far as where to set up where you can be comfortable?
There's two places that come to mind. Both are great racetracks. They're just a challenge for spotters. The first one is Caraway because literally you're at the same height as the flagman. You know, yeah. If they could put us up on top of the tower or build us some scaffolding or put us in a bucket truck, I don't care. It'd be nice to be up higher where we would have a better perspective of the backstretch. And the same exact problem with Carteret County.
Yeah.
Carteret County, awesome.
Beautiful facility.
Absolutely.
Just flat. And they didn't burrow at the infield.
Yeah, I think they would have hit the water table if they would have gone down very far because they're so close to the coast. But great racetrack is just, you know, not as accommodating for the spotters. A lot of people don't like Southern National because you got to kind of, you got to climb up the erector set or whatever to get up on the roof. And
if the wind blows, I get worried.
Oh, yeah. Well, you can feel that thing swaying, but heights don't bother me. You can't get bothered by heights and be up there, you know. So I like Southern National. It's, you know, as long as it's not a 40-car field trying to get 40 spotters up there.
Oh, I'm sure some of those guys are not in very fit shape to climb that ladder.
Yeah. Well, that ladder's kind of a spotter restrictor plate there. It's not so many. You can't be but so big and get up that ladder, especially if you're wearing a backpack and got equipment and everything else. You know, a lot of the camera guys, I'll have to hand up cameras and stuff back and forth. New Smyrna, God almighty, I got called to the trailer and got my hand slapped at New Smyrna a couple years ago because K&N race, there's like 25 cars up there and 2 camera guys because it's, you know, in
Fans Choice or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it was. Yeah, so you've got camera guys up there, you got track cameras, you got the TV cameras, and then you're trying to put all of us spotters in, you know, basically a shoebox. So that gets very frustrating. It's one level. So people are standing on camera boxes and milk crates, and some people are bringing ladders from the trailers. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And then, you know, there's kind of a respect thing that spotters will do, is go and mark their spot with a piece of tape.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, so, you know, we do that just about everywhere we go. Well, somebody moved my tape at New Smyrna, and I was, which is, you know, okay, now what? I mean, you know, granted, the camera guy has got a job.
Yeah.
Well, so do I. We're all paid to be there. We got to work together. But I'm not going to move your camera out of the way. Don't move my tape out of the way, you know. And it's one of those things that, you know, and then one thing gets moved, another thing gets moved or whatever. So I got called to the NASCAR trailer, but we all got to see eye to eye, and we went ahead and raced, and everything was good. But, you know, that's just a big respect thing. You know, you don't go tugging on Superman's cape. Not to say that I'm Superman, but at the same time, you know, you don't want to. Everybody's there to do a job. Yeah. Everybody's there to make money and you know, try to have a successful night. And, you know, when stuff like that goes on, it's just disrespectful. You know,
and to help, I think, put in perspective for someone that doesn't know, it'd probably be the equivalent of you as a spotter going up in the flag stand, trying to stand in front of the flagman.
That's right.
Of course he's going to be upset. He's there to do his job. You're not sharing the space with him. Granted, you wasn't supposed to be up there in the first place.
Right.
But I think that'll help put it in perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you know, those guys, you know, if you're going to have a TV crew come in there, I wish they'd just rent a scissor lift or whatever they need to do and not be on the same platform as the spotters, because it's just too much and too small of an area. But
here's a question I've always wondered. So, especially when you go to the NASCAR races, they're longer races, and it seems like you guys are kind of you're away from everything and everybody, which is a good thing. Do you have to like limit what you consume before you go up there so that you don't have to like? Because this doesn't seem like a job where you can lend itself to a bathroom break.
Well,
like
believe it or not, most of the cup tracks, they have bathrooms pretty close to the spotter stand or whatever. And a lot of times we're under caution. You can tell it's going to be a long delay. Then, you know, there's a time and a place for a pit stop for us too. But you know, it just depends on the track mostly. But usually most of the cup tracks, because you're in that position, you know, you can't expect guys to stand up there for 4.5 hours or whatever, you know, and
better have some comfortable shoes on.
Yeah, comfortable shoes, sunscreen, you know, a cooler, some snacks.
Forgot about the sunscreen.
Yeah.
Have you gotten your face burnt off?
Oh yeah, you'll get fried up there because there's no place that we go that we're inside. Yeah. We're always on the roof. It'd be nice for them to put a canopy over or whatever. Bristol in a thunderstorm is always a challenge. You can't get off of that roof fast enough.
Yeah, I'm about to say.
You know, I mean, it looks like a hurricane off of 3 and 4 at times, and you know, lightning and everything else, and we're still trying to race. But there's been some hairy moments at Bristol for sure.
Have you ever gotten to a road course?
Yeah. When I did the K&N series a couple years ago, I went to Watkins Glen and I forget the name of the track, but there's a really nice track in New Jersey. You know, that's a challenge. I mean, Watkins Glen is absolutely, if anybody ever gets a chance to go, that is a great facility. Yeah, it is a party. I mean, those people up there, I mean, they party like they do at Talladega. I mean, they're inside the track and outside the track and lined up all the way around it. It's so cool. VIR, beautiful facility. Yeah. The only thing I hate about road courses, you can't have. I was able to have spotter help at VIR and Watkins Glen, but the track in New Jersey, you could see the whole racetrack from the spotter stand, so it was really cool. It was like a big tower building. It's like an old Air Force base or something. It's pretty flat, not a lot of train changes, but yeah. You
didn't get that at VIR. That thing's got some elevation dip in that thing.
They put us on a flatbed truck in the middle of a field, and like, this is what you got.
It was like right there out of those kind of little bit of S-turn, a little bit.
Yeah, they called it NASCAR because there was a big left-hand turn there, and then they went up under a bridge, and then they went up a hill, and they're gone.
You lose them. Yeah. That had to be, man. VR is gorgeous.
It is gorgeous.
It's not good to spot from.
No. But it is a very cool facility. I really like the road course racing, and my driver at the time, John Holloman, he was one heck of a road course racer. We just always seemed to find mechanical trouble with the car. Yeah. For some reason, we had a bug in that car. We couldn't get it out, but we led half the race at that track in New Jersey just because he was able to save tires. Everybody else was running so far off the pace, you know, trying to save tires, and he was just, you know, digging. So he actually lapped several people on a 1.5 mile, 2-mile road course. I can't remember how big the place was, but he did a great job in the road course car. He really did.
So now I'm gonna take a turn down the Primrose path a little bit.
All right.
In what moments as a spotter do you just like feel like the most helpless? Like, are there certain moments that just happen, or just freak deals that happen, and you just like, you almost get sick to your stomach, but there's really just nothing you could have done? Like,
yeah, there's moments like that. I mean, you know, the second 25 lappers at Bowman Gray, chances are, you know, we're going to be up front in the first race, and we're going to end up somewhere in the back in the second race. And, you know, that's really usually where we shine. But there's sometimes that you just can't.
You're just buried.
Yeah, you're just buried. And especially if you're on the outside. I'll preach. You know, I'd almost give up a spot to be on the bottom to start on the second race, because you can hide in the grass. You can turn left and go out through the grass. But if you're on the outside, that wall doesn't move much. No. And open wheel cars and guardrails don't mix. So
yeah, I remember when Brian Weber tried to. He almost went over it, I think. He got like halfway up.
There's several that have attempted.
Gone over it, I think.
Yeah, there's several that have attempted that. I think Bobby Hutchins turned his on his side, and Austin Pack turned one over, and I mean, there's Kevin Powell's got a great picture on his Facebook page of him scaring the hell out of the flagman at Bowman Gray. But that's a helpless feeling. Last year at Daytona with the truck was absolutely heartbreaking. We know we've got a really fast truck. We've got a great strategy. We know we're going to have a good run. And the second lap of the race, we run over a piece of lead and knocked a brake line off of the car and blew a tire and took us out of the race on lap 2. Right after we had our good run at Talladega and bring that same truck back and our same plan. And we just knew we were going to have a good day if we could stay out of trouble. And which, knock on wood, we've been pretty good about staying out of trouble. But there's just things that you can't control. So,
So how do you kind of set your schedule for the year? Do you have like certain guys that you're with all year, and then the rest of the time you're kind of available like for freelance? Like I've always been curious how you work your schedule.
Yeah, I mean, Brian runs part-time. Jared Fryer has been running part-time off and on. He's going to go for the late model championship portion of the Cars Tour this year. Jonathan's got the car that is close. It's relatively close to here. He's a really good friend of mine. I've been his main spotter since 2010.
Yeah.
So anytime that he says that he's going to run for a championship, I try to go and help him out as much as I can. A couple years ago when he wasn't running full-time, that's the reason that I went with Holloman and we tried to run full-time on the K&N series. I helped Jared full season on the super late model deal portion of cars and whatever, and ran some pass races and whatever. Lately, I've just been, I enjoy Bowman Gray Stadium. I've got opportunities to go Xfinity racing or, run more truck stuff or whatever. I kind of work for myself. Spotting is a moneymaker for me, but it's not how I make a living.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I really enjoy being with my friends on Sundays and hanging out on the lake with my boat and my friends, and having that freedom, and I enjoy the hell out of that. And there's no place I would rather be on a Saturday night than Bowman Gray Stadium. There's just nothing like it. 90% of your friends are there. It's 17,000 people. Everybody in the world is watching.
Yep.
It's just and when we run like we do.
It's fun.
It's fun. You've got a really good opportunity to have a lot of fun, but you've got a pretty good chance to go home mad too. But you know that when you walk in the gate.
Yeah.
And a lot of people hate it. A lot of people used to love it. That swear they'll never go back. But those are the same people usually beating the damn gate in to get in the next week. So
yeah,
because there's no place like it.
It's an anomaly for sure.
It is, and it's really cool that it's 10 minutes from here.
Yeah. So to kind of wrap up, what has kind of been your proudest moment? Like where you were just I want to say happiness, but maybe happiness is the right word. Like just a moment where a driver or whatever you were involved with either gets a win or just accomplishes something, and you were just like the proudest you could be. I mean, because you had such a big hand in it as that voice on the radio.
Right. There's so many moments. I would have to probably pick one of my more proud moments was our effort in 2012. We had a motor that was in pieces, and it was race day. We had a motor that literally had bearings and crankshafts and stuff strewn across tables. And I talked a guy, that was head of that motor deal, into letting me go and buy an engine to put in Jonathan's car at literally 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning. And I drove to Greg Butcher's house at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we had a modified motor sitting there that he had rebuilt that he hadn't run yet. And so I handed him a check, and we loaded that motor in the back of my 1985 S10 pickup truck and brought it here to my house, and 14 of us were in my garage piecing that thing together. Aubrey Fishel came over and helped us out. We had help from our team and everybody else trying to volunteer and pitch in. We fired that car, but we had to change the motor plate on the front of the engine and the plumbing and just everything that could go wrong went wrong. It's 95 degrees. We go to Bowman Gray. We missed practice. we missed qualifying. They said, all right, look, we know you're in a bad position or whatever. We'll give you 3 practice laps. We went out there, and Jonathan's like, yep, car's pretty good. So that was a draw race. It was a 100-lap draw race. I think we drew third.
Yeah.
And we took the lead pretty quick and led the whole damn thing and won the race. And I've actually got the big fake check hanging on my garage wall down there from G-Oil. So anyway, I thought that was a special moment. But there's been a lot of special moments, even not race winning moments. When Brian Doza at 59 years old goes and finishes 8th at Talladega. When we qualified third with the ARCA car in group qualifying because our strategy just happened to work out perfectly, and we were able to get the right pull from the draft in front of us and put up a big number. And there was guys in front of us on the racetrack that didn't make the race.
Yeah.
But because we, as they say, sucked up to those guys in front of us, we were able to put up a big number. We ended up third. You can imagine and we missed the pole by like 0.2 of a second or maybe even less than that. Maybe
pretty close.
It was really close. And it's really cool to see somebody that doesn't have a lot of success, and even at short tracks or maybe struggles here and there or whatever, to go to a place like that to fulfill a dream and be successal at it. So
all right. Well, I appreciate you taking time, brother, and I will give a word of the wise. If you got all the way to the end of this interview, if you see Tony spotting at your track, or if you see him at Bowman Gray, if it is green flag, do not walk in front of him.
That's
and
right.
do not try to have a conversation with him.
That's right.
Maybe under caution, he'll look at you, but don't bother him under green.
Just before the national anthem or after the night, you can feel free to come down to the pits and hang out with us, and I'll talk just until I'm blue in the face. But yeah,
don't bother him under green.
Yeah. I'm in my office at that point. I don't bother you at work. Don't bother me at work. But anyway, I appreciate everybody.